You're listening to the Scottish Football Forums podcast, the home of Scottish football banter.
A very good evening and welcome to the Bottom Four podcast on SFF Podcast. I'm Dave, your host, and thankfully we're not going to be speaking about my beloved Dons this evening. We're taking a break from that. Yep, it's all about St Mirren, Kilmarnock, Livingston and Dundee. So first and foremost, to my right from St Mirren, it's Robbie Collins. Robbie, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Dave. Thanks so much for the invite on. I'm excited to sort of get into my team and obviously speak about the rest of the guys' team. It's sort of very close, bottom four, you'd say, this season, to be honest with you. And I don't think one team's really better than the other, so it's going to be an interesting conversation.
Absolutely. From the Ayrshire, Killie, the better looking part of Ayrshire, it's Stephen Hopes from Killie. How are you?
Very well. Again, thanks very much for coming on to the show. Nice invite for you guys. So, yeah, looking forward again to get into the guts of the other three, as it were.
Off to West Lothian, it's Carl Carson.
Hiya. How are you all?
Very well, very well.
Good.
And finally, closer to home for myself, it's in the city of Discovery, in Dundee, it's Carl McCaffrey. How are you, Carl?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me again.
Excellent. Right. We'll save the best till last, which is Dundee, because they're currently 9th in the Scottish Premiership. So, Carl, Carson, good evening. Big news in the last, I wouldn't say 24, but more 48 hours with David Martindale going upstairs and Marvin Bartley coming in as manager. What's your take on it? Because it feels a bit peculiar from the outside looking in.
Yeah, it's a funny one because I kind of didn't see it coming, but at the same point, it had to happen at some point. You know, I mean, he's gone 24 games without a win. You can't really justify not making some kind of change. But I guess part of the reason why I didn't really see it coming was because why is game 24 different to, for example, game 16, game 19? Why was yesterday, why was Sunday the day that they decided to make that change? Possibly Kilmarnock getting the win. I think opening that gap to 6 points, I think maybe there's no longer the argument there that you could go, oh, well, if we just get one win, we can get back up to 11th and then maybe we can turn this thing around. And Davey has categorically said that he wouldn't actually walk away from the club. So I'm not overly surprised. I know it's not really the done thing. It's not quite unprecedented, but it's not really the done thing to move the manager upstairs. But I'm not surprised that it happened at Livingston. Marvin Bartley taking charge. Again, kind of somewhat predictable. If not, it's not a sexy appointment, so to speak. No. But given Livingston are a football club that kind of preaches continuity and, you know, trying to not make drastic overall huge changes, I can understand it. I think it would have, from my point of view, it probably would have made more sense if he had a quote unquote interim tag, which he doesn't. So
Can I stop you there, Carl?
Yep.
When you look at Queen of the South and what he did at Queen of the South, there's that question mark. Totally.
I think that's why it's not been overwhelmingly accepted as a good appointment, certainly from Livingston fans. But it's quite funny because when he left for Queen of the South, that coincided with a few years ago with Livingston completely collapsing. Yeah. And everyone said, oh, well, actually, Marvin Bartley was the brains behind it all, and Davey was just the boy picking the team. It was Marv. And he failed at Queen of the South. He's come back as a first-team coach at Livingston, and they've not done very well. So this idea that losing Marv because he was a genius 3 years ago has kind of fallen flat a wee bit. So it's a great opportunity for him, and it's certainly for his perspective, it's kind of a no-lose situation, because if they get relegated, no one's going to pin it on Marvin Bartley, and if they stay up, then he's done a great job, and he'll have got some more credit in the bank.
I mean, you look at who obviously have had as coaches alongside Davy and Marvin.
Yeah.
They had Christoph Berra, but they had Neil, but I forgot his last. Was it Neil's? You might know.
Neil Hastings.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's the assistant. So he's after Marvin left for Queen of the South, Davy made this call of bringing Neil in, or promoting Neil to assistant, because he didn't think Neil would really be going anywhere anytime soon. And they brought Brian Rice in as first team coach. And the thinking behind Davy was, it's easier to replace a first team coach who goes in elsewhere and gets an assistant job or a manager's job elsewhere than it is to actually replace an assistant manager. And there was this idea that Neil, and it's been proven to be true, to be fair, that Neil Hastings wasn't necessarily at a point in his career where he had ambitions to be his own man.
When you look back at Davy Martindale, I'm not chucking Davy Martindale under the bus here, but considering his media comments about officials this season, and from a fan perspective, justifiably so, may I add. However, it's exactly the same time, is there maybe that element of Livingston are getting enough scrutiny as it is without Davy Martindale coming out in the press and basically questioning the integrity of Roy Coleman, questioning the integrity of the referees in Scottish football?
Aye. Some of the stuff Davy says obviously doesn't help things, but a lot of the time it is kind of justified. There's definitely been some kind of ludicrous calls against them, and I guess, and that kind of played into this feeling that actually Livy aren't that bad. There's maybe just 2 or 3 poor decisions gone against them, and they've given 2 or 3 last minute penalties, and so I think that was partly why maybe they left it so long to see if he could turn it around, because there was definitely, in the games I've seen, I've kind of started covering them the last 2 months or so, and other than 1 or 2 games, they've actually you've left the game thinking, they probably should have got a point in there. Or the games they've drawn, like they played Aberdeen off the park and lost 1-0 at the end of November. And there's been a few times like St Mirren recently. Wouldn't say they played them off the park, but they were 1-0 up with a minute to go. And that's ended up costing them 2 points. And there's been the Kilmarnock, of course, the kind of handball, although arguably Livy should have had a defender sent off after 10 minutes, right enough. So there has been this kind of idea that luckless, shall we say, it's not necessarily down to them just being a poor team. There's a lot of things going against them where when you add them up and they keep happening, at some point
go back
you'd like to think it would turn around, but it never has done up till this point.
Going back on to Davy Martindale's role there as sport director, what does that mean for Brian Rice? Because was that not his role?
I would need to double check the wording. I believe Brian Rice was head of recruitment.
Okay.
Because Livingston have kind of essentially what Davy's done, and I remember talking to Davy 3 or 4 years ago about kind of his whole recruitment process and analytics and whatnot. And essentially Livingston have kind of founded their own mini Jamestown analytics, where they've got all this data from 35, 40 leagues across the world. And essentially it's Brian Rice who kind of sifts through that, trying to put in all the data and all these algorithms that spit back out all these players. And then from that, he then goes and tries to do a bit more scouting. But just generally speaking, I would have thought that would be something that falls under a sporting director remit. So I guess we've kind of still to find out exactly what Martindale's new role will actually entail and how that fits in with what's already in place at the club, because it's a new made up role to allow Davy to stay at the club whilst acknowledging that he actually needs to step back from manager because it's not been working.
In your role, you are a journalist, or you're
Yes.
a journalist. Are you expecting a busy night after you come off this call?
No, not really. Not really. I think Davy spoke after the game on Saturday saying he wanted one more signing. I would imagine the change in manager doesn't massively change that. But also, I've genuinely not heard a single kind of rumour or suggestion that there is actually someone they are definitely after. They lost Mo Sissoko. He got recalled by Manchester City and then sold to a team in Turkey. So they may well be trying to bring in kind of a midfielder. But Davey kind of alluded to on Saturday just how difficult it is to actually bring someone in. If you bring someone in from a foreign market, it'll take them a month to get ready, and then you're looking at the start of March. Is that really worthwhile? If you're trying to bring someone in on loan, they're in loan because they're available on loan because they've not been playing, which then means that it takes another 3 or 4 weeks to get them up to speed. So I'm not necessarily expecting anything, but I wouldn't be shocked if one person came in. For me, it would be a defender, but it seems to be most likely a replacement in midfield for Sissoko if they do actually bring someone in.
Can Livingston turn the season around under Mirren?
It's hard to see it just now, because I think just generally in football, it's a bad sign if you are playing well and still not getting wins. Because if you're kind of playing to your maximum and you're still not being able to pick up points for a variety of reasons, it's not a good thing. So it could just be that they needed some kind of shake-up, a different voice on the touchline, or someone with a slightly different view of how to play the game or how to line up. I don't see it making a drastic change. But there are...
You'll probably get a better idea come Wednesday when you play Falkirk.
Aye, I think so. What I would say is now, I actually started the season as a journalist covering Kilmarnock, and since left that role, and I'm now covering Livingston, which is a role I'd kind of previously been in. What I would say is I do think Livingston are a better team than Kilmarnock, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I think they're going to pick up more points between now and the end of the season and kind of claw it back. And obviously Kilmarnock have done a lot of business as well that are players I haven't seen, so they could well themselves be viewing those new signings as a catalyst to turning their season around and going on a wee run. But from what I've seen, it's a tough ask. I hate to say the table lies, because the table doesn't lie, but Livingston's performances aren't those of a team that should have 11 points from 24 games. But the problem is there's only 14 games now left to fix it, and they've dug themselves a hole that I think is probably too deep.
Yeah, you look at the squad. I mean, team on Saturday: Pryor, Brennett, Finlayson, McGowan, Fatty, probably Babacar Fatty, but yeah, Danso, Tate, Pittman, McLennan, Muirhead, and May. That's a very good team there.
It is. Individually, you look at the squad and you go, actually, that's not too bad at all. But for whatever reason, it's not clicking. I think while I understood starting the season with Ryan McGowan and Danny Wilson as your centre-back partnerships. They were 36 and 34. I'm not sure that's a great idea in the Premiership. And then obviously McGowan's had his illness. He was hospitalised for 3 weeks with whatever it actually was, some kind of infection. And I don't think he's quite looked the same since. So I did before he left, Davey spoke about how they needed to improve on the attacking third, but actually they do have the worst defence in the league, and outside of spending 150,000 on a left back from Finland, they've not actually done anything to address that.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, was you?
No, I was just going to come and ask Callum. I was listening to the owner I think it was before Livingston played Hearts and we played Falkirk at home. And they sounded very optimistic that he sort of wanted to keep Davey in charge until the end of the season. And they had no intention of sacking him, which I think you can only say is fair enough. But do you think it was the result at Pittodrie that really done it for Martindale? Do you think that type of result really sort of put the damper on things? Because, I mean, you had, as you said, you'd drawn 3 games before that. I've also put them on penalties. Lost to his, drew to his, for a very late Gogic goal as well. So, it was very fine margins up until that result at Pittodrie.
I thought it certainly didn't help, did it? The utter collapse that it was. I think obviously if it stays 3-2, you kind of another kind of hard luck story, blah blah blah. But to then just collapse in the last kind of 15 minutes and give up 3 goals, and it has happened a couple of times where you actually think, nah, I'm not sure the players are actually really up for this. Like 3 games out of 4, they look great, and you're like, oh, probably should have done more. Probably should have picked up a point here. But there's that one game where they get beat by 3-4, and the players just look that they actually look like they don't know what they're doing. So yeah, it wouldn't have helped. But I actually do think the main factor was probably the fact that Kilmarnock won on Saturday, and then Calvin Ford probably didn't have that argument of, Davies only 1 win away from kind of climbing back up the table, and then we'll get a wee bit of momentum and everything can turn. So it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if actually Kilmarnock lost, because I'm not sure, as I kind of alluded to at the start, if you're going to let a manager go on such a long winless run, why is the decision made after 24 games where you could make the perfectly justifiable argument after game 14, after game 16, after game 19? So yeah, I do genuinely wonder whether it was actually the Kilmarnock result on Saturday that was the point where Ford or Davey, I don't actually. I assume it was Ford who made the call, because given how vociferous Davey was before it, saying he wouldn't resign, so I assume it was Ford that made the call that went, something needs to change here.
Is Marvin done press before Wednesday yet, or?
No, that's tomorrow. Tomorrow. Well, that's the other sign that it maybe actually wasn't coming, because we got the kind of the info through, so to speak, on Saturday, about 7:00 on Saturday, and it actually had Davey down as doing press. So I do genuinely think it was a kind of Saturday night, maybe into Sunday, and the two of them actually kind of agreed that it probably does need a wee change.
Yeah. Moving forward, the last thing Livingston want is the Championship. However, they probably, go back to my point earlier on, there maybe was too much of a deflection to how the team were getting on when VAR was getting mentioned pretty much every week in post-match interviews.
Yeah, I mean, there's it's all right blaming VAR and saying all these things, and while that can be true, if you're still not winning games, for example, getting denied a last minute penalty against Kilmarnock, it doesn't matter if you're 3-1 up at that point, or St Mirren with I don't think it was a free kick, but Davey moaned about the Gogic incident for the late equaliser against St Mirren. Again, it doesn't actually matter if they're 2 or 3 goals up at that point, which they could have been. They'd hit the bar and had a couple of good chances. So yeah, there's only so much you can blame officials and VAR, and you actually have to look at yourselves at some point and say, actually, we've not been good enough.
Was it, correct me if I'm wrong here, Carl, was it COVID that Livingston were in a perilous position and found a way to overcome it and stayed up? Was it COVID?
No,
the season.
They did quite well with COVID because they had Lyndon Dykes and then they sold Lyndon. So I'm trying to think what season was it? It would have been. I don't. Did they actually really struggle at any point in the Premiership?
If I remember correctly, they were 12th in COVID, and then they picked up a couple of good wins after Gary Holt left and Martindale took over.
Actually, yeah, okay, no, that's a fair point, yeah. But I think Gary Holt left fairly early in the season.
It was like November, I think it was.
Because it was November when Dave. But actually, to be fair, actually, Davey's first full season in charge the next season, I think they went 5 or 6 games to start the season without picking up a point, and then picked it up. But yeah, that's I had actually not taken that into account. But yeah, they do actually have a wee history of having slow starts. But game 24 isn't a slow start. Game 5 or 6 is a slow start. So yeah, there has been a couple of times where they've kind of struggled out of the gate and actually picked it back up. But yeah, no sign of that happening this year.
Yeah, I'll come back to you fairly shortly, Carl. We'll go to Stephen Hopes at Kilmarnock. Let's say about Stuart Kettlewell, the better. We'll get that out the way to start with.
Agreed.
We're just getting a one-word answer. Is that how poor it was?
Yeah, that was a shambolic decision for the board. And unfortunately for our point of view, and as these grey hairs haven't came themselves, I've been a season ticket holder for many a season now, and unfortunately we have got a history of appointing poor appointments. Steve Clarke and Derek McInnes are probably the exceptions to that, and going back to Kenny Shields, who had to fall on the sword with Michael Johnson era. He won us the cup against Celtic, and the season later, because it was in his contract to go if we finished 8th or above, then Michael Johnson invoked that and he went. So we have been pretty poor in terms of the current board. We've been pretty poor at appointments. Alec Dyer, just because he was in the Steve Clarke sort of background team, he didn't even want the job, get rallied into it. We just stumbled from there. We don't seem to have a clear and concise recruitment process, no very well structured behind the scenes. Billy Bowie puts a lot of money into the club, fantastic ambassador for the club, and still is bankrolling the club, so he's done an awful lot right for the club. Unfortunately, in terms of recruitment, that's no his finest hour. Hence, Mr. Kettlewell, I'm sure at the time there was the thought process that there was over 80 applicants had applied for the position. Robbie Nielsen being one of them, apparently. Yeah. When Kettlewell was appointed, this is not when McCann's been appointed. So if we go back to Kettlewell, there was 80 applicants at that point. Kettlewell gets the gig. Now, he clearly interviews very well, or he's very good at PowerPoint presentation. But the issue from my point of view is that we don't have a football brain on the board. We really do need somebody like Davy McKinnon, somebody of the sporting director role. James Fowler had it a few years back, but unfortunately James Fowler will fall on the sword of Alec Dyer being his appointment. So that didn't help him. But he wasn't qualified for the position. An all-rounder like somebody like Mixu Patalainen or David McKinnon, who have been businessmen, they've been CEOs, they've been agents, they've got a plethora of skills that we should be tapping into. Davy's a club legend as well. We should have had someone on the board to go through that recruitment process. So Stuart gets the job. It started actually okay to start with. The problem, and I think the problem we are now paying for, is that we recruited a lot of bang average players, and then we didn't get a tune out of them. I think the basis he came to us on was that he would do similar to what he'd done at Motherwell in terms of Aaron Lennon. He would get a young project player. Marcus Dackers is that project that he brought in for us, but bring a project player in, we'll make him a lot better than what he is, and we'll sell him on for big money. That was the vision, I think, that was sold to the board from Stuart at the time. That never transpired, and some of the players, and I try my very best not to try and single out or alienate players, which is difficult on these things, to try and keep it. But when there's a catalogue of errors for the same players consistently, it becomes very, very difficult. So I think the board waited too long to get rid of Stuart. They made the wrong appointment to start with. I think it was a poor appointment. I think it was probably a cheap appointment. That factored into the fact, to be honest, that we are putting a training complex together just now on the edge of the town, which is costing us a few £1 million. We're going back to grass at the end of this season as well, which is another 750 grand. This season was always going to be one of those seasons where we just had to try, and we had overspent under Derek's reign. He get the world and his wife thrown at him in terms of finances and players, etc. And I see his supercomputer up at Jamestown is telling him, computer says no earlier onto a deal. He wants more and more and more. And Billy is very, very accommodating. And unfortunately, when the accounts came out at the AGM recently, he was too accommodating. And unfortunately, the size of our club, we can't carry passengers. So you fast forward into Stuart getting the gig. He brings on these players. A lot of them just not at the level they need to be, and coupled with that, he wasn't going to get the best out of these players because he tried different formations, different ideas. Some, we're going on about Davy Martin deal there in terms of some of the contentious decisions, etc. We started to get some of that for Stuart as well, where some, I've got to say there was some.
Was it Celtic he came out?
I've got to say that was a howler in fairness, but at the end of the day, as two of the guys on here, I'll allude to say Mr. Lyons certainly got away with a couple on the games that St Mirren away at Christmas there was carbon copy of the Livingston one, in the last few minutes, and it was ball to hand, whatever way you look at it. But that Celtic one was a howler, and that was literally in the last kick of the butt. It was a gut wrenching decision, but Stuart was very much, and I think very much the way he was as a guy was, if you tell him something, that's what it is, and he's very much a black and white type of, this is it. There's, I think, too many players there that were not confident individuals, and I think to get the best out of these guys, you can't be black and white. There needs to be a bit of flex, there needs to be a bit of bend. Some of our problems as well came from Max Stryek going out. As soon as he sort of went out, that's kind of dovetailed with our results going the wrong way. We were very, very poor at addressing, and Stuart in particular, at addressing the keeper situation. We didn't address it. We had the young lad Beach in for Chelsea. He got thrown under the bus. He had a couple of sort of clangers. The arm should have went round the guy rather than we go in an emergency alone and we get Toby, I can't even pronounce his second name, for Celtic, who I think he knows where Parkhead is, but I think that's about as near he got to a game. So again, that didn't help us. We now appear to have addressed that, and we got Roos in, who looks okay. I mean, the Stryek thing was out with our control. That was something that was picked up in a medical, and it was to do with his heart. So therefore, it was out with the club's control. How that wasn't picked up when he signed, I've no idea. But it came to light. Luckily, he was actually listed on the bench on Saturday as back in the squad, so he's very close to coming back. So that should help us with the catalyst, maybe the results going the right way. But I certainly think a combination of factors certainly have led us to where we are. Where we are, certainly bringing in Friday was a fantastic day for us in terms of signings. We bring in Finlay Curtis on loan to the end of the season for Rangers. Fantastic. What we have been lacking when we've lost Danny Armstrong, we lost Matty Kennedy, Fraser Murray, we lost width, we lost creativity. So therefore, these guys weren't replaced. I mean, Scott Tiffany, that's a pale shadow of what you want to be, having as a replacement. And again, no disrespect to, but I think if what I hear and what I see, he's going away to Morton anyway. So, the lad that came in, who, believe it or not, is Irish, who's played for a Moldovan team. He's again another winger. He came in on, and again, those those players coming in. He came in on a permanent deal, and so did Joe Hugo, who had been a Manchester United academy player. But he's been around. He's only 22-year-old, but he's been in Newcastle and Sunderland's academy before he went to Man United. He's been at Wigan, Altrincham, Carlisle, Barnet. So he's a wee bit of football, and he came on for the last 20 minutes. I think he got on Saturday there, and he actually looked pretty good. He looked pretty sharp. Major difference on Saturday, I think, in terms of getting a result against Aberdeen, who, to be fair, were fairly poor. Anderson and Tyrese Jules were playing together, and they looked as if they had a good link-up. We have been wasting John Jules since he's been here because we're playing him out in the right wing. It's not his favourite position. We don't have the creativity to just too many players. David Watson in particular has went a wee bit off the boil. Brad Lyons has went a wee bit off the boil. There's too many players that have unfortunately went through a bit of a hard time, and I'm sure some of that's down to confidence as well. The more the results went, 17 it ended up at. That's demoralising for fans to go along. Never mind players to turn up and keep putting a shift in and keep hearing the message. So I think the change will be good. I think Billy and Neil have came in. It's been an all right start. In fairness, I think Saturday was probably the fruit a bit of work on the training ground, and you can see. What I liked about it on Saturday was that we were bang at it for the first kick of the ball. It wasn't actually, within 5 or 6 minutes, we had Polworth went through and he should have scored. He'd a shot and goal. We had a header for Robbie Dees that, again, should have scored before we actually got the goal. But no, we started to gel. We started to look pretty much like a unit. Everybody was bang up for it now. Whether that was a catalyst of 3 guys coming in on the Friday, so everybody suddenly thought, I need to up my game. Bruce Anderson just finished like Bruce Anderson does of old. I mean, his finish for the goal was fantastic, and that's what you want to see. And the pleasing thing about the goals were that both strikers were involved in assists and the goals, which is very pleasing. So yeah, I think positivity is coming for Ayrshire at long last. It's taken a long time for us to get there, but yeah, I think there's loads of reasons as to why we are where we are, but I certainly think it's salvageable. I don't think there's any doubt we're going to have enough.
You were on about the financial situation there with McInnes and the training ground and the pitch being relayed into grass. Do you think the repercussions still to come financially for the club?
Well, I mean, again, we've just had set accounts here at AGM last week, sort of thing. So yeah, we're still losing money. We're still hemorrhaged 750 grand. But some of the actual costs are way down on what they were in terms of the background team and the analysts, etc. sort of thing. So this is the actual. Although the losses are there, there's a lot of the losses in, and some would probably argue that Stuart Kettlewell and co should be slightly cheaper than Derek McInnes and co as well, but that's I suppose another. But yeah, the financial ramifications will always be there. From my point of view, I've got to hope Billy Bowie stays around for a long time yet. Yeah. I would like to hope that he sees the fruits of his labour. I mean, the training complex will and the grass, a combination of both, will attract better players for the club. The girls' team who are flying at the minute are 13 points clearing at the top of the league. They look like promotion. They're going to have a purpose-built stadium there as well, because there's a wee at Murray Park with Rangers. There's a 500-seater stand where the girls will now have an actual home stadium, because at the minute they get shunted about because Rugby Park getting open for them. It doesn't always happen. There's sometimes on public parks in Troon and Ardrossan, which is horrendous for the girls. So that will bring all that under one roof as well. All of the players will be in the community, in the team, because we are a community club. So there's lots of positives, and I hope Billy hangs around for a good couple of years to see really what he's built there, which is fantastic. I've already had a look at some of it. It's a few months ahead of schedule, and it looks tremendous.
Yeah, for Kilmarnock, you were speaking about Stuart and how it didn't look ideal in terms of the timeline of the appointment and how it all incorporated in the one. Was there that same feel when Neil and Billy came in and got appointed?
Yes. We probably...
Because it came out of nowhere.
No, really. No, when you're sitting
okay.
in the stands, no, it was coming. They should have pulled the trigger probably 3 weeks beforehand, minimum. But it was certainly coming. It was poor. I mean,
have you Neil and Billy coming in? Felt a wee bit out of the blue.
No, that's
okay.
No, again, the personal circumstances around it dragged its heels purely because Billy Bowie is the man that signs the cheques, but he also wants to be active in terms of the recruitment process. Billy had personal circumstances whereby, unfortunately, his father passed away in the interim period, so therefore things kind of went to a halt, if you like. So the applicants come in and the process gets slowed down slightly in terms of that happening. Now, in terms of the calibre of signing Neil and Billy coming in, again, candidates that were out there at the time, I mean, there was press and paper talk about Robbie Neilson, but I'm not sure there was any more than press and paper talk about Robbie Neilson, to be fair, because my understanding was he's pretty happy in Belgium, and there wasn't an awful lot in it, but we'll never know till Billy or someone at the club. And communication's probably something we're really bad at anyway. So therefore, it seemed to drag on for a guy that's sitting in a sports scene studio and a guy that's sitting on a Radio Scotland on a Saturday sort of thing that were there within hours of Stuart being. That wasn't a decision we made overnight. That was something that clearly was in the mixing pot for a wee while. So the process really we should have been looking freshly at to where the candidate would be while Stuart was in position. Now, that's not nice to say that, but that's the reality of business. We should have had feelers out. We should have been thinking who's going to come in. Billy and Neil get the gig for, it seemed to drag on for an awful long time. Chris Doolan, unfortunately, didn't have a good time. He actually came in to get Chris Burke's old job. So he's come in to be youth.
Yeah, he's like under-19s manager, is he?
Under-19s, youth development. So he's going to be in charge of all of the youth team. So he came in to do that job. I felt a bit sorry for him because he came in and it was a hell of a nice guy, Chris. I've met him several times. Really nice guy. However, clearly nice guys don't win things. You need to be a bit, and the confidence being down with the players anyway. I think it wasn't quite the right thing to do. At the point we get rid of Stuart, we should have been thinking, I say before that, who's the appointment going to be? No, put somebody interim in charge. And I think, I'll never know, but I think the board kind of thought, well, if it goes okay with Chris, will we offer him it? And, again, that's poor. And again, it's back to poor planning, I think, in the club's part. We should always have an eye on what's happening down the road because, as Steve Clarke and Derek McCann has proved, you can get success at our club, but it's a stepping stone to going on to something else. There's not going to be a Kilmarnock manager there for a long period of time. They want to build their stock and then go on, and there's nothing the matter with that. That's what we would all do in life. If you apply your trade in whatever you do, you want to be the best that you can be. And if somebody offers you a lot more money to go and do a similar thing, you're going to do that. But from my point of view, that's hurtful for the club not to try and protect itself. We need to be thinking smarter in terms of appointments.
Did you see Saturday's win coming? Did you feel like it was not far away?
No, to be honest, I was. Well, Friday perked us up. I've got to say, the three guys coming in on Friday, that definitely brought a bit of buzz about again, sort of thing. It gave you a bit of a spring in your step. But as I say, the major difference when you sat down on Saturday, literally you just get down and sat in your seat, and we were bang at it. We came flying out the traps, and you're thinking, well, hold on here, this is good. We're linking up players, it is good. So it looked good. But no, if you'd asked me if you'd asked me up until Thursday, are we going to get something on Saturday? You'd be thinking that's going to be a tough ask. But I say the signings coming in, I think they're going to be key for us.
Absolutely. Do you think that's a turning point for the season now? Just the manner of Saturday's victory.
Oh yeah, I think we've definitely. I certainly think in terms of players, we've got enough. There's a few rumoured to be going out in the next. There's no pressure. I don't suppose if they're going on loans as such, because that can happen as well. But I think there'll be one or two go out the way. I think they're possibly looking at another couple potentially. Whether that'll happen tonight or not, we need centre back. We definitely need cover there, because we're light there. Shelty Brown has come on to playing very well. Lewis Mayo has played very well. The boy Larson that we signed as well, he's come in and he's got a wee bit of dig about him. He likes a challenge. he's okay. Dominic Thompson he's flattered to deceive. He's not good at going back the way. He's good at going forward, but he ain't good coming back the way. So I certainly think we need to stiffen up. Centre half, we definitely, a couple of centre halves would be what I would be saying in the window if we've got left in it, because we've taken striker and we've got two midfielders. Width is what we're missing. So we've addressed that, but I certainly think we need to look at the centre halves now.
Sorry, Dave, you muted. Yeah, sorry, I just had a question for you, Stephen. I was just looking at the BBC live text for the deadline day, and I noticed that there's a rumour going around that Portsmouth, they were after Luke Graham for a while. There was a rumour that they'd switched focus and we're going to have a look at Lewis Mayo. I was wondering if you heard anything about that.
There's been other clubs linked with Lewis over the transfer window. His form has went off a bit, to be fair. He's one of my favourite players, I've got to say, and a genuinely nice guy. I've met him a few times. It genuinely did pick a knock up midweek. So that's why he didn't start against Aberdeen. They just didn't want to risk him, because obviously we've got a bit of a clash coming up on Wednesday night as well. So therefore, I think the thought process was that it wasn't worth the risk. And Shelty Brown's been playing that well, that they kind of thought, well, we can leave him in, we'll shuffle Larson across to where Lewis would play. But he's one of the players, unfortunately, that's out of contract. We did pay money for him. He cost us, I think, circa 150 grand for Rangers. He was with us on loan prior to that. He wanted the move to come and play first team football. So, as to whether that might be something that I would think, I'd suggest now at this time of the day, it's probably late in the day. But he's out of contract. I think he'll go in the summer anyway. To be fair, but I'm optimistic that he doesn't go tonight.
What is it about Ayrshire that Aaron Dishmola comes back, by the way?
Yes, seems to be like. I thought he was bringing Malumbu with him. Thought it was maybe help the aged. But if Mr. Polworth seems to be heading towards Dingwall, then it's going to 1 for 1, I think, in reality, because that's pretty much a like for like there, really. I'm not convinced that. I don't think players coming back rarely works. He has some coming for his fourth time. First couple of times under Steve Clarke, okay, but I would think potentially he's been in Greece and Turkey and stuff like that, hasn't he? It's the level of football he's been playing. He's not great. 31 now as well. So it's only until the summer as well. So whether it's a bit of cover with maybe the prospect of Tiffany and Polworth going the other way, then possibility. But I think maybe like Mr. Kettlewell coming in, it's slightly underwhelming. So I would build that one.
Go back on the start of this game, Stephen. Do you think the Aberdeen game is that catalyst to go and kick on, or do you think it's that usual result against the Whipping Boys? That's a question from one of our SFF podcast contributors.
Who was saying Whipping Boys Aberdeen?
Yeah.
Maybe a bit harsh on Aberdeen, to be fair.
I'll rephrase the question. Can Kilmarnock kick on after beating Aberdeen, or was it just a freak result against the usual Whipping Boys, i.e. Aberdeen, when a team need a win?
Yeah, we've played teams that needed. I mean, when we played Dundee, in reality, if we had actually beat Dundee at Dens Park that night, we actually would have went above them. So they're sliding doors moments everywhere. No, I think there's evidence certainly that and the goal that Dominic Thompson scored in the cup as well against Dundee, that was straight off the training ground as well. I think you're seeing Billy and Neil's influence coming in. Was it a freak result? It was a freak in terms of we haven't won in 17. So yeah, it's freak for that point of view. But no, I see encouraging signs. I don't think it was. I mean, Aberdeen were poor, to be fair. They didn't. But again, I think they were maybe like me. They were maybe a bit startled at how fast we went at them. I mean, effectively, I think the first goal was 12 minutes. Second goal was 5 minutes after it, not even 5 minutes after it, sort of thing. So within 15, 16 minutes, we were 2-0 up. By the time we get to half-time, we were kind of coasting. The only downside and the clever point from our point of view was David Watson get booked on about 40, just before half-time. And I said to one of my mates, what I would do would be I'd be getting Rory McKenzie on there for David Watson now, because David's the type of player that like Shinnie, and that's the parallel I'm trying to give. Yeah. You can't take the wee bit of aggression and bite out of David's game, because that's what makes David the player that he is. So therefore I said, let's get Rory on there, because we're 2-0 up anyway. Rory will give you a bit of dig in the middle of the park and he'll solidify things. And luckily Neil agreed with me, because about 5 minutes or so later he took him off. Now, Peter Leven should have maybe done the same thing with Shinnie, because Shinnie's similar in terms of he likes to leave his foot in. I've got to say it's never a straight red, but the referee was pretty poor for both teams on Saturday anyway. But it's never a straight red, but it's a second yellow. So I think he was caught between a rock and a hard place, that he's put the red out as a VAR, and you're thinking this could be comedy, because he's ran down the tunnel, he's in the shower by now, by the time they had went to VAR, and then they overturn it from a red to a yellow, but that's then a second yellow. It could have get quite complicated in comedy. So I think the two of them were yellow cards, so I think it equals a red anyway, but I've got a wee bit of sympathy there. But I think leaving Peter, who was with Kelly as well, Peter maybe should have had a wee bit more experience there and thought to himself, well, let's hook him before, like David Martindale did for the big boy earlier. It's like get him off before he gets sent off, sort of thing. So, but I'm glad that Neil and Billy decided that David would be the switch and Rory came on and it done as good as well. But then the two guys up front combined well for the third goal. And that was a game by at that point. So yeah, all good.
Siver Nielsen, for example, spoke to the newspaper press after the game on Saturday and said the Jelly had no idea how to deal with Kelly.
Right. Okay. Strange. Yeah, I mean, I would have thought maybe watching us would have been a good idea. No, what? To be fair, since Billy and Niels came in, the formation hasn't really changed. Yeah, we've changed the personnel around slightly, but it's sort of 4-3-1-2, I would have said on Saturday.
Yeah.
But it's no over change much. So yeah, how not to deal was maybe because we ran at them quickly. I mean, we did have pace. We were running at them from both sides. Dominic Thompson in particular had a good game. He was certainly catalyst. But I've got to say that Mitov, he looks like a liability in terms of end goal. I mean, for the first goal for us, I mean, the ball goes out for a corner and he effectively punches. I hate keepers doing that. He punches it rather than actually catching it. But he punches it and that actually leads down to the ball getting spilled and it then getting whipped in for Kilty. And Brad Lyons seemingly got a hair flick to it. I'm not so sure. If I was Greg Kilty, I'd be contesting that one, but it goes in for the first goal. But the keeper definitely looked as if he had a rick in him. So whether the defence were a bit spooked with that as well. And obviously the boy went off with a bad knock as well, who he actually seemed to do himself more injury than because he went in over the top of Greg Kilty, which held the game up for about 10 minutes. Whether that kind of knocked him a wee bit out of shape as well, kind of thing. But at which point we were 2-0 up anyway. But whether that didn't help in terms of, I don't know if there's any reports as to how well he got on. I know he was going to hospital. It looked pretty serious at the time. So yeah, but I find it strange that they wouldn't know how to deal with us, because Nielsen effectively was the replacement for Noster? What's he called, the boy that
Noster.
Yeah. So was it Nielsen? Did you say they get interviewed?
Yeah.
Well, he was a replacement. Yeah. No, well, strange, but again, sympathy for him because we were 2-0 up at that point. So.
Yeah. How do you think Kellarus is getting on? Because obviously the how one against Dundee.
So that's debatable. To be fair, that's a defender and a keeper, and none of them can shout "my ball."
Yeah.
That's schoolboy stuff. I learnt that, and I'm no good football player, but I learnt that when I was 12. So they both put their hands up in the dressing room after it. Unfortunately for us, in the 93rd minute, we're out the cup. I think he actually looked assured all game. He actually looked pretty assured in the Dundee game. He looked okay on Saturday. To be fair, we were kind of that far in front. I think Robbie Dees had a good block with his face and his foot early in the first half. I think Roos maybe had one save to make in the first half, but I can't think of anything of note that he had to do after that. I think in the second half, maybe one save, but he's looked okay. Goalkeepers, unfortunately, and I've said it before, they don't get allowed a lot of mistakes, do they? If a midfielder misplaces a pass, a defender, a striker, then the fans grumble, but they go on. A keeper makes one rick, and he looks like a clown. But no, I think he looked okay. But Stryek's supposed to be coming back for middle of February is what the talk is. So yeah, it might be kind of irrelevant, but it's no gimme that he'll go straight back into the team. But I think certainly that would be the hope.
Excellent. Right, we'll go on to Robbie Collins from St Mirren. Where's it gone all wrong since the cup final win then, Robbie?
It's hard to sort of sum up, David. It's almost like 2013. You go look back at that, you look at the fixture list for the rest of the season, we only won one game for the rest of that year. In the league, you look at today and we've only won one game since winning the cup in the league, so it's kind of getting spells back to that. But I'd like to think that we've not been as bad as it's made out. I know we're 7 games without a win in the league and it all seems doom and gloom, but it's just been a case of, you take Bacchus and O'Hara out of a team, or you take any team's 2 best midfielders out of their team, and any team will crumble under that pressure when you're doing it at this level. It's really difficult to lose players of such high calibre. That's your club captain. That's Keanu Bacchus. It's obviously played at a World Cup, international caps. He's really well recognised. You take both of them, and of course it's going to be a struggle. And look, it's not an excuse. We've got a really good squad that I genuinely believe can go and get wins, and I know we'll obviously probably speak about tomorrow night soon, but I'm nervously optimistic against Hearts tomorrow night, considering the record we have against them in Paisley. But it's been weird, Dave, because I sort of felt like the cup win maybe glowed over some of the cracks. It's not been a great league season for the beginning. It's not like we had a great start of the league, went that cup run and then tailed off. It's been a sort of scrappy league form since we started the season, to be honest. So it's no, and it's too surprising, to be honest. It's just a case of now we really need to turn it on and try and get wins, because we're actually not that far off a Kilmarnock or Livingston, to be honest. Livingston are a million miles away from us, albeit they can't really win a game right now. So we'll see how they go. But I'm pretty pleased or pretty confident, I should say, that we can stay up and we'll be fine. We'll be away for that playoff spot. I don't see us being in danger. And if you actually look at the season as a whole, I'm very happy with the way it's went. I think the 3 gents that are here would snap your hand off for a cup win at the start of the year. It's one of them. So I am still pretty happy with the way the season's went. I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll be fine. And if we get one Mirren, which I hope we will, then I think we'll really kick on.
On the past and present, Jake Young got sent off on Saturday. Do you think the appeal get overturned? I know St Mirren have appealed it.
I think it will. I don't know if Callum agrees with me, to be honest, but based after that game, but I didn't see it being excessive force, out of control, or endangering our opponent. So, in my opinion, there's no grounds to give a red card. I think it was ridiculous even going to VAR in the first place, and the fact that John Beaton's then said it's a red is even worse, in my opinion, and the fact that we've then got to moan VAR duty again tomorrow night against Hearts, just a weird one to me. But no, in my opinion, it definitely wasn't a red card, and I think it will get overturned. And it's a shame, because I actually thought Jake had a pretty good game. I thought he was quite direct, hitting the counter-attack, obviously, for the big miss for Richard King in the first half. He's a really good player, really promising. I think it was a bit odd to see him at the left. We usually play with the 2 strikers up front. He sort of switched formation for the first time, played 2 wide players. I thought that worked at points really well, and I'm excited to see him made it. But I definitely think that'll go overturned, in my opinion.
Yep. I'll almost get sacked from the show's interim presenter, by the way, because I forgot to ask you an important question, Stephen, and that's about David Watson. Turned down a bid from Bolton, and Aberdeen are putting in a pre-contract offer, but you're telling me he'll probably be more aligned to going to England, not now, but in the summer.
Yeah, Yeah, I would say so. I don't think David's preference at all will be Aberdeen, and that's no meant any offence to anybody in Aberdeen apart from anybody that wants to sign him. No, I think I think it would be the green half of the city that he would look at going, because his family connections are if he was going to one of the ugly sisters. But he's certainly no. I think his ambition and aspiration is at a slightly higher level. I don't think he'll stay in Scotland. I think in the summer he's certainly more likely to move on, unless in the next 3 hours Aberdeen pony up quite a bit of dough. Then I do not see that happening. But again, the player will have some sort of say in it as well, and I don't think his preference would be to Aberdeen. As my humble opinion.
Well, when you think about it, the very medicals have to be done. It's 3 hours from Kilmarnock to Aberdeen alone, so
yeah.
But yeah, back on to you, Robbie. Apparently it's going to be a busy evening, but not a lot getting done so far. Apparently a creative midfielder very close, but apart from that, it seems to be all very quiet down Paisley Way.
Yeah, it has been. Obviously made 3 signings so far, 3 pretty decent signings, I'd say, to be honest with you. We're really yet to see the best of all 3, to be honest with you. Obviously we've seen young Natete for a bit during the game at the weekend. Obviously Alan Campbell came off the bench. Still, I'm really promised about Alan Campbell. I think he will turn out to be a good player. I think it's one that Robinson knows well, and I think he knows how to utilise him well. But it's been quiet today. Evan Mooney looks set to join Arsenal for 265,000 plus add-ons. I'd assume we've got a pretty good sell-on clause. Evan's obviously been one that's not really got a chance, unfortunately, but it's a really good career move for him. And then comes, as you said, Jacob Devaney looks like a player that's going to be coming in for that creative midfielder role. Hopefully moving Gogic back into defence, because I just don't think it works in the midfield, to be honest, and I don't think it ever really will. So I'm hoping that if we get Jacob in and potentially one more loan, then I'll be pretty happy with the way the windows went, and hopefully we can kick on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been a fairly productive window. And like Alan Campbell, for example, I think he had offers from England, but he's just become a dad recently.
Yeah, I think so. And obviously the connection with Robinson will make his decision a lot easier. It's somebody that he's worked with for quite a while in football, so it was a bit of a no-brainer. If he can keep his fitness up again, I'm really confident he'll turn into a good player for us, especially when you're probably looking at another 4 to 6 weeks at for both O'Hara and Bacchus, so we'll need somebody like him in there.
Do you think somewhere are not far away? Do you feel like the corner could get turned very, very soon again?
I want to be really optimistic and say it will turn the corner tomorrow night, to be honest. I'm really optimistic that we'll pick something up against Hearts. I mean, we shouldn't be. There's nothing to suggest that we won't. By the way Hearts are playing right now, they can beat anybody, but Paisley's always a notoriously tough place for Hearts to come. You know, that's twice this season. We've got a pretty positive result against them. Probably should have won in one of the games as well. So I'm pretty confident that it will turn soon. If not against Hearts, then I'm sure it'll not be too far away.
Yeah, just to back up on what Stephen said, I'm not going to bring Stephen back in, but I have noticed Ewan Payton on Twitter saying Aberdeen are long-term admirers of the Scotland 21 captain, i.e. David Watson. They had an approach to sign him rebuffed by Kilmarnock in recent days, so have turned to a PCA. It's understood a move to Batorji is not the player's preference. So you have exactly the same source there, Stephen, but that'll be an interesting one to follow, obviously. As alluded to, they've rejected an offer from Bolton Wanderers for David Watson. But back on the Buddies, when I seen him at Aberdeen, I was covering the game for a newspaper, Robbie, and when I seen them that day, I felt like they were almost there, but just not quite the first article.
It's probably the story of the season. You go back to the match on Saturday. Callum, I'm not sure if you were there, mate, but I thought we really lacked on the attacking side. Obviously, Keon Atete and Jake Young both started the game, and I thought Young out on the left and Adobe out on the right going pretty well, but in that middle spot up front, we just really lack any sort of quality, whether it be Mandron, whether it be Ayunga, whether it be Atete so far, which I'm not going to disregard Atete yet. We've only really seen him play for 45 minutes, so it's pretty harsh on him, but we seem to be missing that front man that can score goals. And look, I'm not on here crying out for a 20 goal a season striker. It's unambitious. We're never going to land a 20 goal a season striker. It's very unlikely. So we need to work with what we've got. But it just seems like that spark that we've had up front in recent seasons has really went away. You're so used to watching guys like Mandron Junior run the ropes. You know, you go back to the cup final against Celtic, Mandron Junior absolutely bullied that Celtic defence for the whole game. Three really well worked goals in that game as well. So, you know, there is signs there that we can play well, but it has just felt quite flat in the last few weeks, and we're barely scoring goals as well, so that'll need to change soon.
I think you're the lowest goal scorers at home in the Premiership.
I'm led to believe I think the lowest scorers overall, unless I'm wrong, in the Premiership this season. So, you know, that's not a great start for the reading, but I'm pretty confident that we'll turn that around eventually, I think. And it's, again, no disrespect to the teams around us, because I genuinely do believe in this league anyone can beat anyone this season. That's the way it is. It's so tight. But I do believe with the squad that we've got, we're more than capable enough to be out of that relegation zone and not really being any threat.
So you're trying to tell me something on a way to start this season, firing all cylinders again, because you've got three away games after tomorrow night?
Aye, and we've just played a schedule as well. I think we've played 4 in a row. So, you know, we've been really hard done by with these away games recently. But, look, as I said there, any team can go anywhere and win. That's the way it is. In my eyes, I think the league is that tight that we can go away to these places and win. Of course, we've not shown that recently. The 2 away games at Livingston, of course, we win the cup, but a late Gogut's goal gets us a point in a game where we sort of fell flat at times, to be honest. So it has just been one of these seasons where, look, you can't take anything away for the cup win. You know, that you can't exactly just park that to one side and go, all right, onto the league now, and we need to focus on staying up. Of course, we want to, and that is an expectation, but you need to factor in the cup win. And I'd say if we're finishing 9th come the end of the season or 10th, then it's still been a pretty successful season in St Mirren's books anyway.
I mean, if you get something out of Hearts tomorrow night, that'll be seen by many as a bonus, but it's probably making sure you don't swap up at Airdrie on Friday night is where people will be picking at.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, look, as it stands, the Old Cup double still on the cards, although very unlikely, but it was one of these games where it could be a slip up. I'm pretty positive that we will have enough to get through that game. I don't see Airdrie too often. I don't know too much about them. I heard they were trying to sign Curtis Main, so I don't know if that deal's going to get done before the game, but it definitely is one that people are looking at as a slight banana skin.
I mean, you're obviously playing Hearts, and that's a much tougher game, so you'll probably play near enough a strong lineup tomorrow night. But I'd imagine Airdrie near a bit of Broth tomorrow night. I imagine they'll make a lot of changes with Friday in mind.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. I definitely
would be the KDM.
Yeah, I don't see us making any changes, to be honest. I think we'll go pretty strong as you'd imagine. I don't think Robinson wants to risk any sort of players missing for the game, to be honest with you, especially when the record is so good against Hearts. You know, Robinson, the players, should be getting into this game feeling like they can get something as well. But on to Friday, you're right. Airdrie playing in the KDM probably will rotate a bit ahead of the game. And look, I don't quite know too much about the boy, but Ewan Henderson, the Airdrie have got up front, he seems to be getting a few goals and assists, so it's definitely going to be one to keep an eye on, especially when the defence, which, you know, St Mirren's defence, I feel, is always credited for being quite compact, you know, being tough to break down, being tough to beat, but this season we're letting quite a few goals in quite cheaply, so it's going to be something we'll need to work on. But no, Dave, just in you're saying that there, I think one of the best pieces of business we've done this window is keeping a hold of Robinson, to be honest with you. And obviously, I'm going to assume, like Stephen said about Robbie Nielsen, it is just all paper talk. I don't think Robinson was ever going to go to Aberdeen. I think if Aberdeen really wanted Robinson, he'd be in there by now. So I don't see that move happening, which, to be honest, for a St Mirren fan, I couldn't be more happy away. And I am just glad we're getting to keep him to the end of the season now.
Yeah, on Curtis Main as we speak, he has been attracting interest from Morton and Airdrie. However, nothing's came to fruition as of yet. But looking back in the cup final, go and just explain and go and just illustrate the day for us, please.
Yeah, it's so difficult to put into words just how good it was. Getting, you know, growing up, I sort of missed out in 2013. I was a bit too young at that time, so I never really got to feel that. I obviously got to experience the Championship, which was really nice, but a cup win's been something that's been off of the radar for Robinson since he really got the job. It's been something where we seem to draw Celtic every single round, every single time, and go out early on. But I had a feeling when we first of all, when we beat Hearts and then gone away to Rugby Park and beating Kilmarnock on penalties, I had that feeling about it that this was going to be the time. And to get to Hampden for the first time in Robinson's reign, and then to go all the way and win it was just absolutely amazing. And the whole day as well. You know, St Mirren fans haven't had many days out of Hampden at all, to be honest with you, so we enjoy it. For literally the start of the morning, getting to the stadium, the atmosphere was amazing. A lot of St Mirren fans turned up, had really good display as well, which compared to Celtic's, you know, if you cast your mind back, was I think just a piece of iron board, to be honest, where you were writing on it. I think it said sack the board or something. You know, in my opinion, looking back at that, there was only going to be one winner for the start. And as much as it's easy to go back and say that now, because believe me, the nerves were wrecked inside that stadium with about half an hour to kick off. Looking back now, it felt it was going to go one way. And when Fraser scored in the second minute, it was almost a pinch me moment. You couldn't quite believe it. It was so early in the game, so off guard. You look back now, obviously, you see the pictures of what Robinson put on the Hampden doors about, you know, faith over feed and all the sort of media pundit quotes. Chris Sutton springs to mind where he calls us big physical and all the rest of it. You know, to have that on the door, that was enough motivation for the players. So to then go on and, let's be honest, we embarrassed Celtic. It could have been a lot more than that actually was. It ended 3-1. It could have been 4 or 5 with the chances that we missed. Really just summed up how far the team's come. And to sort of have that on Robinson's record now, you know, the one thing people always claimed they missed, especially twice at Motherwell, was a cup. To come to St Mirren, getting 3 consecutive top sixes and win the cup, that he's done everything they really can at St Mirren, to be honest.
Was you in the nightclub afterwards? Because I know Stephen Robinson got freedom of one of the nightclubs.
He did. They get freedom at Vienna's for life.
Vienna's, that's what it is, yeah.
No, I was it for a bit. Obviously, the players went to the town hall to celebrate as well. It was such an unbelievable atmosphere, to be honest with you. I missed the open top bus parade. I was ill that weekend it happened, so I actually missed the game as well. I can't quite remember who we played, but it was just everything since that. It's just, you know, all the celebration stuff. It's been amazing, and it's one of the things that, look, it's been about 14 years since the last time we were at Hampden. We don't know how long it's going to be again, so you just soak up the moments in, and you know, you just, it's one of the things that's never going to leave your memory. And I know, as I said earlier, you know, for all that we're right down the bottom right now, we're in 10th and all the rest of it, you know, it's been a successful season no matter what happens. And as I mentioned earlier, any of the other guys would absolutely love to have that type of cup run. And I think more teams will, to be honest. I think that's one of the key things I took away for this season. It's looking, Dave, to me like the league's getting a lot tighter. To me, we're going to start seeing more teams win cups and more teams challenging and more teams really being successful. That's the way it's gone, in my opinion. So I'm excited to see what's next. Hopefully a cup double for St Mirren.
Cup winner side, how would you assess Robinson this season? Because last season was a very tough season for Stephen Robinson with everything off the park he had to deal with, and that can't go under a radar here. Do you think that's, I'm not saying that's tailored or pushed into this season, but do you think there's a bit of a, I don't think hangover's the right word, but do you think there's a what's the right word? Do you think there's a recurring theme from last season?
I mean, you'd certainly think the players are still hungover with the way we're playing recently, but no, you're right. Look, with the way last season went, you know, it wasn't exactly cheap to attract some of the players that we did to the club. You know, I'm specifically looking at the striker we signed, former Motherwell striker. You know, that, for what I heard, it wasn't cheap to get him on loan. We paid a lot of the wage bill for him. You know, that's stuff that can really hurt a team. You know, we had players blaming other players and driving accidents and all the rest of it. You know, that Robinson really went through just about anything you could imagine last season, and to still come away sneaking in the top 6 was incredible. And look, he has built on it. We obviously recruited well for Jamaica, probably the biggest market we sort of explored in the summer, bringing on, of course, King and Calvin. So I think he's trying to keep a very positive mind about it. I think it was probably a difficult situation for the club as a whole to deal with. You know, we're so, like Stephen was talking about with Kilmarnock earlier, we're very community driven, and you know, I think ultimately the club did handle that in the sort of right space, but you sort of feel there since the start of the season everything's went against Robinson. You know, injuries, suspensions, red cards, dodgy VAR decisions, which, look, we're not the only team, but you can certainly go and pick out a handful of St Mirren themed bad VAR calls for this season, and you know, that doesn't help a team. To then, as I mentioned, you know, getting suspensions and all the rest of it, it's just been one thing after another, losing Jim Gillespie to Rangers, a very big figurehead in the St Mirren backroom team. It feels like everything's trying to knock us down, but the one thing we've sort of taken the last 3 years for St Mirren is we just keep fighting, and I think we will towards the end of the season, to be honest. And looking past Hearts, you mentioned earlier, then Kilmarnock and Hibs, two really tough away games, by the way. I don't think they'll be easy by any stretch of the imagination. So it's definitely going to be a tight running, but it's one I do truly believe with the squad we've got will come through it on the sort of positive side.
It's funny, right? In all 3 years that I've been in the call so far before Carl McCarthy comes in, you've all had VAR decisions go against you for the most peculiar of ways, because from a St Mirren perspective, Robbie, that Jaden Richardson, was it not initially a yellow against Aberdeen?
Yeah, I think it was initially a yellow.
Which is ludicrous considering it did look like a red card offence. And that just goes to show you how ludicrous VAR has become within Scottish football.
Yeah, and look, I'm certainly no suspect of the fact that every other team and all the guys here and everybody is subject to these bad calls. This isn't just a one team thing or one team's getting hard done by. This is, to me, the sort of, what's the right word, incompetence by the refs. As bluntly as it is putting it, it's to me, VAR's never been the problem. It's the guys that are utilising it and the guys that are using it that's the problem right now. And until they get trained and get better, we're never going to see any improvements. And as I mentioned to you, the fact that John Beaton's on VAR at the weekend and then we're putting him on for Hearts again on VAR, to me, you should get repercussions for making bad decisions like that. And obviously, we don't know what the KMI panel's going to do with that Jake Young red card yet. We're sort of yet to hear the outcome. I think that'll be tomorrow morning. If it is to be overturned, then why is Beaton not getting criticised for that and not getting pulled away for a game that are such high margins? By the way, this isn't just any old season. This is a season where Hearts are trying to win the league and St Mirren are trying to get out of relegation. It's not just any ordinary game that John Beaton's getting flung into here. There's really high repercussions, and if he makes another mistake tomorrow night, which there's a high chance he will because the mistakes are happening nearly every game right now, then it could really cost somebody's season.
Absolutely. Finally, Robbie, where do you think St Mirren will finish the season?
I'd be very I think we'll finish ninth. I want to be optimistic and say that I'd be very happy with ninth or eighth. I think if we finish 10th, I still wouldn't complain. Anything lower than that, I mean, if we fall into the relegation playoffs, I've heard a few people now saying, I think any of the Premiership teams will take care of the Championship sides, but these Championship sides are only improving this season and some of them look really good, so I wouldn't be so sure of that, but no, I think we'll finish ninth or eighth.
Yeah. Stephen, where do you think Kelly's finishing?
I've got to say, take your arm off for 10th at the minute, I've got to say, so yeah, I think 10th is achievable, I think. I think the catalyst with us, and certainly combination as Robbie was saying there as well, St Mirren now bizarrely getting slightly dragged into it. It's going to be interesting. It becomes a big 6-pointer. I mean, obviously we're off the Ibrox before we play next midweek against St Mirren, but the St Mirren game's going to, I hate to call them 6-pointers, but that's a real tasty tie. That's going to be if both results in the intervening period go the wrong way, sort of thing. So I think 10th is what I'd be looking at. And I've got to say, for everything that's went on in this season for us, that probably somewhat a result. You'd probably get a lot of Kelly fans taking your arm off for that.
Yeah, Carl was Livingston avoided the relegation.
I think the smart money would be to say no, to be honest. And I certainly don't see them finishing higher than 11th. But what I would say is if they do finish 11th, I would actually feel fairly confident of them beating a Championship side. I have to say I would actually be quite confident of that. But the smart money would be on 12th, I have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Colin McCarthy, do you think Dundee will finish 8th?
I think it's achievable. I think we're in a position where we're starting to look up rather than down, which is in stark contrast to how Dundee began their season. Robbie was talking about how great it was to win the cup. We would have been happy to get out the group stage. But yeah, the atmosphere at the club is just night and day from now to when it was at the start of the season. I think everybody had Dundee to go down. Nobody had any real belief that Stephen Presley, who hadn't managed in over 6 years, was going to come in and turn Dundee into a half decent side. But as time has gone on, he's proven to be quite a capable coach, and he's built, on the face of it, quite a decent and well balanced squad at the moment. So yeah, I think Dundee are. I think we should sort of be looking up. I think some Dundee fans are suggesting that we should make a top 6 push. I don't think that's realistic. I think it's far more realistic to, at the very least, finish ahead of United, because I think United are on a downward trajectory and Dundee are sort of on their way up. But 8th place, I think if you'd offered Dundee that at the beginning of the season, I think they'd have taken that without a second thought.
I was just waiting to say, Carl, had it not been for a poor goal difference you winning in Paisley on Saturday, you might have not had to be on this call tonight because you would have been 7th.
Yeah, well, I mean that's been a massive part of Dundee's problem this season. Just lost too many games. I'm just looking at the league table now, tied with Kilmarnock on the second most games lost this season. So it speaks a lot to just where our problems have lied this season. That coupled with the fact that not scored an awful lot of goals, second least amount of goals scored this season. And I wasn't at the game on Saturday, Robbie, but didn't look like, looking at the highlights, like there was much going on, and that's been a problem for Dundee all season. It hasn't helped that Simon Murray is not the player he was last season. I think that's been a massive issue for us. But I think what's sort of kept our head above water is that, in contrast to last season, our defence is a lot better. We look a lot more solid. I think Stephen Presley's got the team very well drilled. Our shape is really, really solid. We're quite difficult. We're difficult to beat this season. Last season, we scored a load of goals, but we always needed to score 2 or 3 every game in order to win games. Now it's a case of we can get one, and we're confident enough in our shape, and we're confident enough in what we need to do to sort of keep teams at arm's length. So that's certainly helped. If we can just sort of focus on the attacking aspect of that now, then I think there's every reason that the end of the season could be quite a positive one for Dundee.
Just on Stephen Presley, Carl, he seems to be outlasting the doubters. Is it justified, or should Dundee be doing even better? Is a question that's been asked.
I feel like a lot of the early season form is less down to Presley and more down to Dundee trying to change absolutely everything about their football department at the start of the season. So last season finished, we sacked Tony Docherty, which at the time a lot of Dundee fans weren't particularly sure about. I was not on that fence. I was very much the case of, I can see exactly why they sacked him, because we were in a relegation battle last season, and just the amount of goals we were conceding, that cannot keep up. We just cannot keep doing that. And on the face of it, changing the football department all at once was a bold move, I would have said. And it's taken a long time for Dundee to sort of get their ducks in a row. But I think there was a recognition among the hierarchy at Dundee that we've sort of got ourselves the reputation of being a bit of a yo-yo club. You know, we'll spend a couple of seasons in the Premiership and then we'll be back down to the Championship. And then that cycle just sort of repeats up and down, up and down. So changing the structure of the football department and just making sure that we've got a strong foundation, even if we have a bad season every now and then, we're not really in trouble of finding ourselves in a relegation battle. And then just being able to build upon that season after season. The start of the season was very much a case of trying to get that system in place. So it meant hiring a lot more background staff, we wanted to sign a new head of recruitment. That didn't get finalised until December. A former Kelly boy is there. Well, Stephen, Gary Piggott is the new head of recruitment at Dundee. He's working alongside David Longwell with the recruitment. And the whole point of the football department is basically to leave Stephen Presley with effectively one job, which is setting out the team for a match. So he has a final say on recruitment, but he's not very involved in the recruitment process. He's got coaches to sort of take the training for him as well. And it's basically just a case of Stephen Presley, his sole focus is making sure that the team is ready for the game. And I think it's taken a while to get that together. It took a while to get the right players in to play a system where Dundee can look like a credible threat. And you saw that at the beginning of the season where Dundee were it just seemed like we were camping and waiting to break on the counter-attack. But as signings have come in and they've started to bed in, and as they've improved, you've seen that Dundee have a lot of players there who can really trouble teams and be competitive in every game that they play in, which wasn't the case at the beginning of the season because it just seemed like teams, even if Dundee were defending well, it just seemed like they needed to bide their time for an opening because it just didn't seem like Dundee were ever going to score in matches, and that seems to be changing now. So, in terms of what that meant for Presley, it meant that he was the sort of, he had to bear the brunt of fan frustration for a long time.
Yeah.
But even like if you listen to Dundee's interviews, Billy Cometio did an interview after the derby at Tannadice that we won, and he said that the players felt like they owed Stephen Presley a win, and owed him a run of good fixtures for all the work that he's done off the pitch. So it seems like the Dundee players and the staff are really sort of bought into what Stephen Presley has put together. And it seems that everybody's moving in the wrong direction. They recognise that results haven't been great all season, but I think there is a recognition that everyone is very sort of, they're clear on where they're going, which is a positive thing to see.
I need to stop you there, no, Carl, because what a night you're having. Scott Knight.
Yeah, I saw that just as Robbie was talking about St Mirren, but yeah, Scott Wright back at Dundee. He was on loan from us from Aberdeen. He was still at Aberdeen back in 2019. Very much a standout player in what was a really bad team for us that season. But yeah, it's exactly what we needed. I think it was not being at the St Mirren game, but I think what was clear is there was a lack of depth, especially in the wide areas. So we've got Tony O'Gan and Cameron Congreve, who have been excellent this season. He took them off not long after the red cards and brought on Charlie Riley and Joe Bevan. Charlie Riley, I think, has come on leaps and bounds. Joe Bevan, on the other hand, I think still a player that needs a bit of development. And I think there was a recognition after that game that Dundee needed a bit more depth so that if they needed to make a change, then they're bringing on a player with genuine quality. And, you know, Scott Wright was playing in a European final, 3-4 years ago?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, outstanding bit of quality. It was one of those ones where I saw the rumour come through and I thought, well, right, okay, I'll believe it when I see it. And then it came through and, yeah, that's a fantastic signing. And it looks like we've got another one in the door already, the centre-back from Lincoln, Lewis Monza. And we're waiting on paperwork for a guy from Monterrey, who we have an agreement with in Mexico, a centre forward. Yes. So hopefully that'll get done by the time the window shuts. And I think we're looking at one more. I have no idea who that could be. But January window's been a pretty good one so far. I think we're stronger coming out of it than we went into it.
Wright's a loan deal. Is that expected to be permanent at all?
I doubt it. I mean, Scott Wright, he picked up a knee injury, which kept him out for quite a lot of Birmingham's games. I wouldn't be surprised if this is just a short-term loan deal so you can get back up to fitness, get some game time, and go back into that Birmingham squad freshened see what he can do there. If he plays well this season, I also think that there will be a number of clubs that will probably be looking at him, clubs with deeper pockets than Dundee will.
Yeah.
So I think this is just a deal till the summer, and it'll help out the club, maybe drag them further away from any potential relegation bother. But it's great to have him here while he is. So yeah, very positive.
Presley was very honest with the press at the start of the season, and he was very honest with the press in his first press conference with the broadcast guys. And it was about, if you're looking for a manager that's going to go win titles, I'm not your man. Now, he was very honest. And at the same time, that probably amplified the pressure, because in modern day society, Carl, fans hate the element of managers not being negative, but not having the feel of, you need to have that tangible feel of the fans. There wasn't that immediately, was there?
Well, no, but I also think it was a case of Dundee fans maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure if the phrase "expecting too much" is right. And I feel like a lot of Stephen Presley's comments have been taken out of context, because that quote that you mentioned there, if you're looking for a coach to win you trophies, I'm not your guy. And the very next line that he says is, "I haven't proven that I've been capable of doing that," which he hasn't. He's not won a major trophy as a manager. I think did he win the Challenge Cup with Falkirk? But that's it. So yeah, it's just a case of I find his honesty quite refreshing, because I think he's quite honest I don't want to say to a fault, but I feel like it does land him in a bit of hot water. I think fans, they're always looking for the big sort of hyping up the fan base of, I think we can do great things here. But Stephen Presley's always kept himself quite grounded. He's set quite small targets. Like one of them was, win 2 games back to back for the first time since 2024, beginning of 2024, or whether it's
was it 3 times since the first time since Paul Hartley?
It was we won 3 in a row for the first time since Paul Hartley.
Yeah.
But the back-to-back wins was the first time since the beginning of 2024. But then also trying to remind fans that you shouldn't expect immediate success and immediate progress. It's going to be a long time. It's going to be a long deal. Like, one of his constants is, it's going to take him 2 or 3 transfer windows, or 3 or 4 transfer windows, before he's got the squad where he wants it. And I think as time's gone on, he's been proven right on quite a lot of what he said. Because now we're starting to see the progress that he's talking about, which was another thing that annoyed Dundee fans, where he said he could see progress, but Dundee still weren't winning games. So a lot of fans were critical of the fact that, well, if there's so much progress, why aren't we winning games? But now we are. And now we're putting in performances where we're capable of beating teams. And I think that honesty has paid off, because you're starting to see exactly what he's talking about. And a lot of Dundee fans are now buying into what Stephen Presley is trying to build at Dundee.
What was the turning point for you? For me, it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt it was maybe the Dundee derby.
Honestly, I thought the turning point was, for me, it won't be for Dundee fans, but for me, it was the game against Aberdeen at Dens.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because although we lost the game 3-1, I thought our build-up play, maybe not our finishing or the amount of chances we created, but I thought our build-up play was probably the best I'd seen up to that point. I thought, like, just playing through the lines, maybe our defense, the 2 goals, the 2 first goals we gave away in that game were just us not clearing our lines and giving the ball away too high up the pitch. And I just thought looking at it, you can see, I mean, so we lost the game, but on another day we probably maybe would have won it. And then not long after that, we beat Falkirk. Not a classic performance, but we do enough to beat them. And then we play Killie 2-1, maybe could have won by more on the day. And then follow that up with a win against United, which I thought was richly deserved. But I think the Aberdeen game was the turning point because I think it was proof to me at least that progress was being made and that if we just stuck with it, maybe add a few bodies in January like we have done, then the season could turn out to be a positive one. So for me, the turning point was the game against Aberdeen.
Top six still on the cards?
I don't think so. I think with the way things are sort of going right now, I think the trend is that Falkirk don't look like they're going to drop a lot of points.
No, I've made that point, being an Aberdeen fan myself.
Yeah, so Falkirk I don't think are going to drop that many points. Hibs, I think, will do enough to stick around there. And then the top four sort of picks itself. I think more realistic for Dundee is seeing if we can overtake United and Aberdeen, because I think those are two teams, if they're not careful, could end up getting dragged into it. Specifically United. Aberdeen depends on what their new manager is going to be and what that turns out like. But I think United in particular are in danger of getting sort of dragged into that sort of relegation playoff scrap if they don't start picking up their performances. So I think the more realistic thing for Dundee is maybe 9th or 8th. But I think top 6 is off the cards.
That's the thing. Tony Docherty, there would have been attack with pragmatism. Pressline's very grounded, and I think the latter is starting to work now.
Yeah, well, I think Tony Docherty, I mean, you saw from his time at Ross County, just incapable of setting up a team to defend.
Oh,
like, he just can't do it. But Presley, he just seems to understand it better, which feels like a bit of a dig at Tony Docherty. It's not meant to be. But I think Presley understood when he came in that the defence was a real problem area for Dundee last season, and he needed to improve that. And I think what's also helped Presley is he's been willing to change things if it's not working. So at the beginning of the season, he wanted one of his first interviews when he joined is that he wanted to play with 2 strikers. And he realised very quickly that he just couldn't do that. So he changed to a back 3 with 1 striker up front, which worked reasonably well for a time. We still weren't attacking much, but we looked reasonably solid in defence. We played that system against Celtic and beat them for the first time in 37 years at Dens. And then a couple of bad results, a late defeat to Falkirk, getting beat 4-0 away to Hearts. Decided that you needed to change it again, so now we're in the system of it's sort of like a 4-3-3, and that seems to be working well for a time. So Presley recognises that when something's not working, he needs to change it, and he's quite open to doing that. Tony Docherty, for a long time, he would stick with a back 3 because that's kind of just the system that he wanted to play, and only really changed it because when he was absolutely forced to. But Presley seems to be a bit more flexible.
Oh. Simon Murray, you were touching upon him at the top of your segment there, Carl. Why do you think it's not working for him this season? Did the fact that he got dropped, was that blown out of proportion a little bit?
So at the beginning of the season, the last League Cup group game Dundee had against Montrose, he picked up an injury.
Yeah.
Which kept him out for the first 2 league games of the season. And I think since then, I just don't think he's been... I just think it's been difficult for him to get back to fitness. Whether that's something to do with his age, he's 34 now, or whether that's to do with just the system that Stephen Presley plays. He seems to be the type of striker that works well when teams are on the break. And when he's sort of rushing forward and running onto balls on the break. That's not really the way that Dundee are playing right now. They seem like they want to sort of play out from the back, which doesn't really suit Simon Murray. And you've seen it this season where he's sort of been dropped for Ashley Hay, who seems to be a lot better at playing that sort of back to goal, winning aerial duels, which you wouldn't think looking at Ashley Hay. He's not a particularly tall player, but he seems to be very good at winning headers high up the field and bringing other players into the game, which Simon Murray, he did for a spell last season, but it's not really a strength. I think he scored a lot of goals last season in spite of that rather than because of that. But now, I mean, maybe it'll change. Now he's in a position where he's probably going to get a run of games because Ashley Hay's broken his toe, so he's out for 4 weeks. So it opens the door for Simon Murray to get a run of games, and with the fact that the system's a little bit different, we've got a higher quality of players, and maybe he'll go on a decent run. But I think just a mixture of injuries and he's been. I mean, most of the games he's been dropped for, he's been on the bench for, are largely based on performance rather than injury. Because Ashley Hay, I think, has surprised everyone in how well he's developed. I think Dundee were expecting him to take a little bit more time to turn into a player that could impact the team. And unfortunately, Simon Murray's just been the victim of that.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you very much, guys. Anything else time before we finish tonight?
I think I'm done.
All good. Anything, Robbie, Carl, Stephen?
No, all good, all good.
No, all good.
All good.
Excellent. I just wanted to cover your clubs in full glory and ever and getting swept under the bus because I've not done it enough or I've not missed out a certain segment. So thank you very much, guys, and hopefully we don't miss an exclusive between now and tomorrow morning when the podcast goes out.
Fingers crossed.